Pinball circuit activated.
Alright, I thought I would do a little video on these Wolfpacc Tech kits, show you how to put one together. So these are kind of my go-to kits for display replacements. If you do these, you'll save yourself about $100 or so over buying them already assembled, so it kind of depends on what you want to do. All it takes is some wire cutters, soldering iron, solder. Everything else is pretty straightforward. I've been really impressed with these. These ones are blue to go with the xenon. I think the customer service at Wolfpacc has been really good. He's always been super friendly and he fixes any issues that happen. So let's get started, build a display. One thing I'll point out real quick is there is a difference between the 7 and the 6 display. If you can see that, the whole patterns are actually different. This is a 6-digit display, this is a 7. Bally's will use 4 7-digit displays for the scoring, and then a 6-digit display for your credits and ball and play display. So, just to point that out. Okay, so how do we get started? I usually start with the main board first, and I start with the chips. The one big mistake you have to watch out for here is that there are 2 chips, and they are incredibly similar. They're both the same size, both same number of pins, but they are very different. So what you need to do is look, and the one that says CD, I think it's 454, goes into this U1 slot. So make sure that you get that correct, because if you don't, your display is going to be scrambled. It's not going to work right. So you just kind of get that in there, and these legs can be a little bit of a challenge to get in there sometimes. There we go. All right, so you're going to seat this all the way down so that the pins are all through the back. And I go ahead and do all 3 at once. And then I'll solder up the back side. So I just kind of pre-bend these so they're all correct. And then we put it in there. There's number 2. And then the third one here. Just going to bend in so that it kind of goes that way. Put this in like that. Okay, so there's our 3 chips installed. I do a second check on the number just to make sure it's correct before I solder anything in. So you're going to just flip this over. And I set my soldering iron at 625 for board work. If you go too much hotter than that, you can risk lifting pads and things. So I just do 625. Other people may have different ideas. So I'm just going to solder all this in. All right, so now I just check on my solder joints, make sure there's nothing connecting. You don't want any connections across the joint. I think I'll put a little more solder. I think that's better. Okay, now back to the front side. The rest of this is pretty straightforward. So you have 2 capacitors. They're both the same. There's no polarity here. So they go in the C1 and C2 positions. So you just put the legs in, those 2, and solder them up. All right, back on the front side, there is one resistor that is included in the kit. I will point out it is different than the resistors that come for the display part, so do not mix those up. Okay, this one is in the actual parts that you get here for the kit. The resistor goes in the R1 position here. And again, resistors don't have polarity, so it doesn't matter, just put it in. Now you have two diodes. Now if you're doing a 6-digit display, you don't have to put the diodes in. I usually do anyway because it's easy to do. And that way your display boards are interchangeable between 6 and 7 because otherwise they're identical. But if you are only doing 6-digit displays and you really don't want to put a diode in for some reason, you don't have to. Just get your diode there. The band side is marked, as you can see. I'm going to fix that. That doesn't look very good. So let's just bend that in a little bit more. This diode's being a little bit ornery. So just put that diode in there. There we go. So just put, if you can see on the actual board, there is a mark for the diode. It's not bending very easy. So you can see there's a mark there. That's the band side. So just take your band side, put it on there. And this diode didn't bend very nicely, so it's going to look ugly, but whatever, still work. Okay. So we'll put those two in that, and then we'll solder those in. Now, all that's left on this is to put in the connectors. This baseboard gets these female connectors, and then the connector for the actual connector from the harness. So these are the same, it doesn't matter, just do one at a time. They need to go in flush and square. So what I do is I take one and I solder in one pin, okay, and then check it and make sure that it's square. If it's not square, you're not happy with it, you can just hold it and heat that solder, that one pin, and then you can move it and get it to where it's exactly square. Once you're happy with it, you just solder it in. Okay, do the other side. Okay, so see that one? I picked it up a little bit quick and now it's shifted. See how it's not square? So all we do is take it, you're going to heat that one solder joint, move it in, release, and now you're square, okay? So that's why you only do one pin at a time on these connectors, because they do need to go in square, and if you solder the whole thing in and then discover that you're not square, it's a huge pain to get it square again, because now you have, you know, like whatever, 16 solder joints to deal with instead of one. Okay, now we just have to put the main connectors in. There's one that has a pin in it. The pin goes where the white mark is, and the little pressure seats go towards the bottom of the board like that, okay? So the arrow should point to your keyed opening. Make sure that's correct. Same procedure here. I solder in one pin, and then check it to make sure it's correct and square. That looks good. While I'm doing this, I'll just talk about solder briefly. I use 6040 rosin core lead solder. I do not use, nor do I recommend, lead-free solder. It's much harder to work with. It doesn't melt as well, and it's way harder to remove. Like lead-free solder is almost impossible to get back out and get clean again. So if you ever had to do work on a board or something and you put lead-free solder in there, you're gonna have a bear of a time getting it back out. So once again, just one pin here, and get that soldered in, and then we're just gonna check it for alignment. So it's correct, and all the pins are lined up, so you don't have any issues when you go to install it. Soldered in. All right, that is your base board. Just to point out, these J pins, these little holes here are not used, so don't worry about those. Okay, set that aside. We'll move on to our display board here. This one's pretty simple. You've got two 90-degree connectors that go here at J5 and J4, and then you've got resistors that are all the same that go in all these spots. So I put the resistors in first, and you'll get a package with a bunch of resistors in it. Those are the resistors that go here. Remember, the resistor that comes in each of the little packets for the display is the resistor that goes here. And again, they're not the same. So what we'll do is just start putting in these resistors. Again, there's no polarity, so it doesn't matter. Okay. All right, now we're going to put in our 90-degree connectors. The 90-degree bend goes down, okay? And it's the exact same procedure as before. I'm going to flip it over, I'm going to solder in one pin, and I'm going to check it for alignment so that it's correct. Just let that cool for a moment. And you really want, okay, so see how that one's slightly bent forward? It probably would be okay, but I'm going to go ahead and reheat it and just make sure it's exactly 90 degrees, like that. And if you just put pressure on that top plastic bar, that'll be flush against the bottom of the board and you'll be in good shape. I need slightly out of alignment. Let's see. Who's causing the problem? Oh, I think it's this guy right there. Every once in a while the pins will be slightly out of alignment. They just get bent just a touch in shipping or whatever. There we go. Solder in one pin. Check your alignment. That one's actually good. All right. Now we just have to put our displays in. So you're going to get a packet of displays like this. So just take 7 of them out. Like that. Okay. And these all go with the little comma here down, and you just put them in. Just line them all up. I put them all in at once because what I like to do is solder in one pin and then make sure they're all aligned and flat and flush and all that kind of stuff. So it's not a big deal. Just put them all in with the little comma going down, and we're going to flip it all over at once. I'm just going to solder in the top corner pin on each one. All right, like that. And now we're going to look and make sure that everything's flush across the board here, which it is, and that they're all relatively lined up, which they are, so that's good. If one of them's slightly, not flush to the board, just heat that one solder joint and push it down and let it cool again. You'll be good to go. Okay, so there you go, there's that. Now, last thing to do is peel off all these plastic pieces. This little film here. This comes right off. Oops, sorry. Move the camera. All right, and then there's a pad here. Comes with each kit. Just pop all these out. Line it up. Stick on. And this is going to go this way. It just plugs right in. That's there we go. Okay, it looks like that when it's done. And now we'll take it out to the machine, plug it in. All right, so we are at the machine. This one here is the one that we just did. That was the last one we had to do. There's the other 3 I've done. I have not finished the 6th display yet. That will go here. But next thing to do is turn it on. See if it works. So there you go. So there they are, and they're going to be nice and blue. They're all working correctly. That's how you make a Wolfpacc display.